The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Oh, a Washington-less football weekend. But boy, do we have some wild stuff to talk about, both in college and pro. The Ravens narrowly avoided what may have been their most disastrous regular season loss in history. That may not be overstating it because of the lead they had in Dallas, because of the way they almost coughed it up, and they avoided disaster by a great run by Lamar Jackson. But otherwise, we're saying taps for the Ravens today. How about what happened to North Carolina? They got 70 hung on them in a guarantee game. Yes, James Madison was guaranteed, according to Darren Ravel, $500,000 to play the game. They hung 70 on them. I don't know about Mac Brown. He won a national championship at Texas. He was a great coach in his first go-around at North Carolina and back again. But at some point, everybody gets too old to coach, and that is a devastating loss, which we'll talk about. Obviously, we'll get to the Monday night game tonight for Washington. You know, there was a time when Monday Night Football set this town on its ear. I mean, it was wild stuff. And there were some incredibly memorable games that have been played over the years on Monday night by Washington, whether it was Walt Garrison getting dragged down at the 1-yard line by Ken Houston, whether it was a big game against the Giants or Dallas. And there were some devastating games on Monday night. The Joe Theismann broken leg happened on a Monday night. But in recent years, oh, man, the record for this team on Monday Night Football, 8-30 in their last 30 games. It has not been good. It has not been good at all. And they are 7.5-point underdogs going to Cincinnati tonight. And the Bengals are desperate. They're 0-2. They're like what the Ravens were yesterday, except they're at home. So if they go 0-3 and playing at home against a team that, well, I mean, they won without a touchdown last week, but nobody's thinking they're a good team. They're a developmental team. And for them to go there tonight and win in Cincinnati would be enormous for building the program. But I had a laugh at this over the weekend. The schedule was all moved up because of Monday night. So basically what Dan Quinn did is he made Thursday into Wednesday. So all the scheduled stuff that they do on a regular basis during the week got moved up a day. So he actually had a news conference on Saturday after their last practice before they got on the plane to go play this game tonight. And he said something, and see if you catch this here. He's talking about the incredible feeling of playing on Monday Night Football, and now Jayden Daniels, as a rookie quarterback, gets to experience that for the first time. But he's making the point that Daniels won't find it himself too big. It won't find the moment too big for himself, and he. He said something here, which if you've been around this town a long time, I find it to be ironic and somewhat funny. Here's Dan Quinn talking about playing on Monday Night Football and what it means for the team and Jayden Daniels.
Monday Night Football, it's a lot of fun. It really is. And the environment's good. There's a stage on the field. It's a show of people out on the field before the game. It's awesome. You know, it's like just chaos and crazy. And so for most of the guys, I wanted them to, enjoy the build-up for the game, and then once it kicks off, you go. But there is a build-up to go, and for he and for the other rookies, you go through firsts a lot, and so this and then the next first. And so, first, Monday night game, and you just keep checking. But, that we'll have those discussions about, playing to him. But it's kind of how he's built too, Sam. He's really answered those well before this game. And if he was somebody like me that was, wanting to headbutt the wall before you go out, I'd be nervous, but that's not him, so he has no D-line background in him. So he's one cool customer.
Whether he said headbutt the wall on purpose or not, if you've been here, you may remember it was a Sunday night game. It wasn't a Monday night game, but a Sunday night game in 1997 may have been, I think, only the third, maybe the fourth game that was ever played at, and it was still called Jack Kent Cooke Stadium. This is before Dan Snyder bought the team. And Gus Frerotte, who had a really good year in 96, he was a Pro Bowl alternate. That's how good he was. And coming into 97, there was great hope that he would step up to the next level and become that franchise quarterback. Well, he wasn't playing very well. The team wasn't playing very well. And it's the opening drive, I think it was the opening drive, against the Giants. And Gus scored on a quarterback keeper. And he was so thrilled that he had finally gotten in the end zone after a couple of weeks of frustration that he celebrated by headbutting the wall. And he knocked himself out of the game. He wasn't knocked out, but he suffered a neck injury on that. They had to take him to the hospital. And Jeff Hostetler, who was the backup quarterback and a veteran, he had won a Super Bowl as a backup with the Giants some years before, but he came in and the offense was terrible, and it's one of the worst games I've ever seen. It was a 7-7 tie between the Giants and the Redskins, and ultimately it cost them the playoffs. They were 9-7-1. If they would have won that game, they would have been in the playoffs that year. And Norv Turner, who was at times dryly funny, said after the game about Gus Frerotte headbutting the wall, "I never thought I'd have to tell a player not to headbutt the wall." And he did, and that is all part of lore. So when he's talking about a night game and a quarterback headbutting the wall, it kind of makes me laugh. But again, I think he's right that what we've seen so far from Daniels, the moment isn't going to be too big. He's played in a lot of big games in college. And frankly, when you get to the NFL, these guys who are coming out of programs like LSU, they play in front of big crowds in the NFL, but it's nothing like going on the road in the SEC or, the atmosphere for an LSU home game. I haven't been there, but from what I understand, it's beyond belief. You have to see it to believe it. So, yeah, I do believe the moment is not going to be too big for him tonight, but the reference of headbutting the wall made me laugh. Issues for this team. I think number one offensively is they've got to find a way to get Terry McLaurin the ball. He's had 8 catches over the first 2 games, but for only 32 yards. And that's not what they pay him the big bucks for. That's not what the offseason was all about, developing this chemistry with Jayden Daniels, and the two of them would be making magic or at least be productive at this point, and that hasn't happened. The more explosive receiver so far has been Noah Brown, who was a late pickup. In fact, they picked him up so late they didn't even play him in the opening game at Tampa, but he had a couple of big catches last week in the win over the Giants, including the one that set up the game-winning field goal. And if you listen to Cliff Kingsbury, this was his news conference on Friday, you can almost hear the great excitement about Noah Brown mixed with, we got to figure out a way to get Terry the ball.
He's explosive. He's physical. You feel his presence on the field, whether it's the run game where he's blocking, digging out safeties, or the pass game. You saw him make a couple of really big plays that set up some big-time drives there at the end. But we'll continue to expand his role, and we feel like we have a crowded room there with guys all dying to play and have all deserved to play in some form or fashion, and then we got to find a way to get Terry more involved. That's on me completely. He's a tremendous player, one of the best players in the league, and I got to find ways to get him the football, and I expect that to improve, and I'll do a better job of doing that.
I guess, and to the point on Terry, like, it's most of the years he's been here, that's something that somebody in your seat has kind of said. Is it just the way defenses play him, or why is it that for some reason it seems like it's been a struggle to consistently get him the ball?
Yeah, I mean, defense coordinators are smart. They're going to try to take him away. There's no doubt. And, that's my job to find ways to answer that. And so far I haven't done a great job of it. And, as a staff and me, we got to be better moving forward.
Now, there's more on this, too. And this is the development of the young quarterback. So you're trying to get Jayden Daniels comfortable, and you want him to find Terry McLaurin, but on the other hand, you don't want him forcing it to him. You don't want him to come to the line of scrimmage knowing that he's going to throw Terry the ball. So this is more on that from Kingsbury on the balance between developing this quarterback to make good decisions and still finding a way to get Terry the ball.
Yeah, it's a fine line you walk. Like I said, one of the best things he's done is operate and get the ball to the right spot and take care of it. And so at some point, we got to find a way to get Terry the football, and it really comes down to scheme and me, getting him in the right spots to do that. But I think Jayden has executed the offense, as well beyond what we could have anticipated for a rookie in his first 2 starts against good defenses. So yeah, it'll come. I'm not worried that connection will get there. It's just, Terry deserves to get the ball. He's like I said, one of the best players in the league, and I got to do a good job getting it to him.
And you got to find a way to get your team in the end zone. And some of that is penalties. That was a killer against the Giants. 5 false start penalties in the red zone in that game, which resulted in 7 field goals, and it's a good thing that the field goals were made, but that's going to be a big focus. Can they get the ball in the end zone tonight against Cincinnati, a good team, a team that nearly knocked off the Chiefs 10 days ago. So they've had plenty of time to rest, and they're desperate. They have to win this game. Joe Burrow is talking about, okay, we've been down this road before. Don't worry. We know what we're doing. Yeah, and they may. And 2 months from now, it may not matter that they started 0-2. But this is a big game for them tonight. I would say, if you look at it realistically, it's a bigger game for Cincinnati than it is for Washington. Washington would like to win, but nobody's talking this year about playoffs. It's all about developmental process, and it takes time, et cetera, et cetera. So if they manage to win this game, then things get really exciting around here. But I don't expect that to happen, and the 7.5-point spread is probably realistic, even though it's an 0-2 team tonight at home. Almost 0-3, the Baltimore Ravens. And I watched a good deal of this yesterday. Yesterday was Red Zone Day. If the Commanders are not playing, I'm watching the red zone. That's the way it is. So I saw most of the late games, and there were a couple of crazy ones. The Rams looked like they were going to go down to the 49ers, and the 49ers missed a field goal, setting up the Rams to win at the end of regulation on a field goal. That was a stunner yesterday, even though the game was in Los Angeles. If you looked at the overhead shots, there was a lot of red there. People in L.A., they got 2 football teams there, but they got other things to do on Sunday. The Rams won the Super Bowl just a few years ago, but people look at what that is, and it's pro football, which they lived without for a long time and didn't really complain about it. It wasn't like Baltimore when they lost their team. They wanted a team back badly. Los Angeles, they were okay with it, and then the league said, no, we need the TV market, so they put 2 teams there. But it looked like the 49ers were going to win that game, and they did not. So that was one of the surprises. And then if you're watching the Ravens game, which was televised here, the whole game on Fox, you're thinking this is over early. This game is done. It's like, 36 to, what is it? What was the score? 28-6 in the fourth quarter or third quarter. And yeah, it was like 28-6. Yeah, and this is a good paragraph that was written by Chuck Culpepper. Maybe with Tony today. I'm not sure. He may be on. I would think he would be, having covered both college and pro this weekend. And he wrote a story about it from Arlington yesterday, and he said, by a 28-25 final score, the Ravens did not lose to Dallas and seemed to hurl whatever crisis this game would dispense upon the Cowboys, even though Dallas's fourth quarter trip, mostly out of the way of the 28-6 script, might downsize this latest in their 3-decade series of football crises here in Jerry Jones Society of Hollow Hype. I like that. The Jerry Jones Society of Hollow Hype. But they did manage to win the game and avoided what would have been an absolute disaster. Meantime, the Raiders, who came into Baltimore last week, came from 10 points down in the fourth quarter, and the Ravens have had a bad habit of doing this. They have changed defensive coordinators this year, and Zach Orr has replaced Mike Macdonald. Macdonald's now the head coach of the Seahawks. And Zach Orr saw the 10-point lead disappear last week at home against the Raiders and almost saw a 28-6 lead disappear in Dallas yesterday, but they did manage to survive. The biggest embarrassment of the weekend, though, goes to the Raiders. Coming off this Ravens win, they're playing a Carolina team which looks like it could finish 0-16. I said that last week. I said, this is, having witnessed as many dumpster fires as I witnessed here in the Dan Snyder era, you could see this one coming. With Bryce Young, it looked like an 0-16 team. Now, they benched Young. They put in Andy Dalton. I went, okay, Andy Dalton, journeyman guy, big deal. The team stinks. Well, they laid a whooping on the Raiders. They won this game 36-22. And Antonio Pierce, who got a lot of credit last year as an interim coach when he knocked off Kansas City on Christmas Day and did an overall good job, got the job, stayed on. When you talk like this, I don't think he's going to last long as the Raiders coach. You cannot throw your team under the bus like this. Joe Gibbs never did this. Most good coaches will not do this publicly. They may do this behind closed doors, but this was Pierce talking to the media after he saw his team embarrassed at home by a Carolina team which was going down the tubes fast.
We got
yeah. Any reason? What's the crux of that? Would you say?
We got to put pads on. I don't know. I mean, got to get on the sled. It's the same group that's, for the most part, all come back and same technique, same coaches. It's not a different scheme. So obviously we're gonna have to coach it better and be some hard on the guys, and guys got to take some rough coaching, because that just didn't see that coming on either side of the ball. We thought we had opportunity to run the ball, and we didn't. We didn't do that at all.
I know you're upset with the performance. How would you rate your concern about the team's effort? It seemed like this is one of the first games under your leadership that the team just didn't seem to show up tonight.
No, they didn't. I think as the game went on, I don't think it was a team. I think there was definitely some individuals that made business decisions, and we'll make business decisions going forward as well.
That's a good line. Players made business decisions, and we'll make business decisions moving on. Business decision means guys running at you full speed. Do you put everything into making a tackle and maybe hurt your shoulder, or do you kind of whiff on that? And those are things that you can say behind closed doors. I'm not so sure you can say this publicly and get away with it for long. We'll see if his team stays with him, but that's a devastating loss yesterday to a team that was in complete turmoil, and the numbers are stunning. Raiders gave up 437 yards. This is Andy Dalton, okay? Andy Dalton is a guy who you just plug in when you have a mess and hope that he could represent you pretty well. The Panthers held the ball for 36 minutes. Only 55 of Vegas's 331 offensive yards came on the ground, and the Raiders trailed by as much as 33-7 in the fourth quarter. They wound up losing this game by a little bit more respectable score, but 36-22 is miserable. And this is a Carolina team which didn't score at all with Bryce Young. Now, Andy Dalton, that's not a long-term answer there. So, and I don't think Antonio Pierce is going to be a long-term answer there. Those are things that you just can't say at a news conference. And I think you talk about losing your team. Those are the kind of statements where you lose, especially if you don't have the chops of a guy who's won a lot. This is Antonio Pierce hasn't even coached a full season. And now he's throwing his team under the bus like that. That doesn't work. Does not work. Also amazing from the weekend, at least to me, the news that CJ Abrams, the all-star shortstop, who may be slumping lately but has had a good overall year numbers-wise, sent down to the minors for what initially seems like one thing, but it's got to be more than that. And we'll get to it as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Mercury Morris passed away over the weekend at the age of 77, a really fascinating figure in the history of football, particularly the undefeated Miami Dolphins and how he protected their legacy like he did. And we'll get to that in an hour. More football, of course, in the next hour, as well as more preview on the Commanders as they play their Monday night game in Cincinnati tonight. Joe Whitt, the defensive coordinator, a couple of interesting things to say as he held his news conference last week. And also in the next hour, there's an interview that was done by Scott Van Pelt last week that will air tonight as part of the Monday night countdown, where he talked to Jayden Daniels. Now, the interview was about 13 minutes. I can't imagine they'll run the whole thing tonight, so just a part of it. So I took three pieces, three highlights from the interview. And, Jayden Daniels, he's cooperative at these news conferences, but kind of guarded, doesn't say a whole lot. But in this sit-down conversation, he was pretty relaxed. And not that he said anything earth-shattering, but it's a side of him that I really haven't seen. And if you're going to become a star quarterback in Washington, you don't necessarily have to be Joe Theismann. But history has shown us that these guys are are good talkers. They all were. Doug Williams, good talker. Mark Rippon, good talker. Theismann, as Tony used to say, he'd open his refrigerator and do 15 minutes in front of the light bulb there. That's the kind of history that goes on. Sonny Jurgensen got into television, So he's a work in progress, but all signs point to someone who is both confident and humble. And Scott explored that with him, which we'll get to in the next hour as well. This came down over the weekend, and it did surprise me because these things just don't happen over one incident in baseball. But it was announced before they played the Cubs on Saturday that CJ Abrams, who was an all-star this year and has some terrific numbers. He leads the team in home runs with 20. He's tied for the league in lead in hits with 133, and has had 65 runs batted in, and has seemed to be on his, and may still be on his way to being a cornerstone of this team. He's under team control. I think it's another 5 years after this. And, this has been a really good pickup as they got him in the Juan Soto trade from the Padres, and it looked like, okay, that's a position you're not going to have to worry about for a while. He's an all-star shortstop. And then we get word that he's been sent down to the minors with just like a game or two left in the season in the minor leagues, and only at that point 8 games left for the Nats for the whole year. And you say, whoa, what's going on here? Now, the reports were that after they lost on Thursday night, last Thursday in Chicago, with a day game the following day, that's a great experience, by the way, if you've never done this. I did this many years ago with my son, an afternoon game at Wrigley Field. So you had the Friday afternoon 2:20 game at Wrigley and a night game the night before. He goes out to a casino, which is, I guess, perfectly legal for baseball. I don't think they have the same rules that they do in football. Football, I don't think you're allowed to, during the season anyway, go into a casino. But he did, and he was seen there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so on just a few hours sleep, he played in a loss on Friday afternoon and went 0 for 3 with a walk. And that wasn't the reason given that he was sent down, but it wasn't on the field play was the reason he went to the minors. And this is all Davey Martinez would say about it before the game on Saturday.
And I just want it to be known it wasn't performance-based. It's an internal issue. I'm not going to give specifics or talk about specifics because of I need to keep these guys and everything, on the down low. I mean, I got other guys out there that I want to support. I'm going to support CJ. He's a big part of our Nats family, and he will be. But at this point, it's for me, it's the right thing to do. So, with that being said, I had conversations with CJ yesterday. We talked for a while, and like I said, for right now, it was the right thing to do. So, and that's all I really want to say about it. He's going to be missed, as we all know, but it has nothing to do with his performance. I mean, the kid was a 20-30 guy, so I know he struggled a little bit, but so does every young player, but he was doing well.
Now, this was not Davey's move. This was a Mike Rizzo move. And if you look at it like, he was in the casino at 8 o'clock in the morning and they sent him down to the minors as the reason, that's not it. This is deeper. And this is the real concern here. If it was just that, you suspend him. You sit him down. A game, 3 games if you need to. But by sending him down to the minors, that's a message. And in my mind, it's more than that one incident. This has probably been building for a while. There's probably been a pattern to this. And they may want to, stop it for now. But I wonder how much of a concern this is going forward. And if it is this much of a concern, might you even think about trading him? Because if this is going to lead you down a path where this is a player who's undisciplined, there's going to be other problems that are going to go along with this. So this isn't just this one thing. This is something that's going on here, and maybe the message gets sent by Davey. He's been on this job for a long time. He doesn't have like Jonathan Papelbon choking Bryce Harper as happened here before Davey got here. That doesn't happen under his watch, and he's known as a player's manager and has a great relationship, it seems, with them. So this is deeper, and for a player that looked like he was a shining light for this team as they rebuild, like, I said to Mike Rizzo back in June, I think, I said, you got to lock this guy up long term. He says, well, we got him under control for 6 years. Well, now because he's got that team control, because he hasn't played long enough, maybe you cut bait and get rid of him now. It's always a better idea to get rid of him too soon than too late. And he may develop into an all-star here, and maybe this is behind him, and maybe 2 years from now he's talking about how much he grew up from this experience, or it's a sign of they got a real problem off the field with this guy. On the field, no problem. I mean, his numbers have dropped a little bit, but that's something to be concerned about. Dylan Cruz, by the way, has been terrible lately. He's come back to earth. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for him as they work through that. Last thing on baseball here that I want to say today, White Sox not only are likely to break the Mets record for losses in a season, as they lost number 120 yesterday, they are likely to blow by it. They have 6 games to go. They could conceivably lose as many as 126. They're 36 and 120. And, the 62 Mets, that was expansion. Things were different. You could protect too many players then. And that was a team also where they tried to bring in some names to get people excited. Old Brooklyn Dodgers, Gil Hodges was there. I think Duke Snider played there. There were players that came there partly for pizzazz. And they were terrible. They were a terrible team, but the Yankees were great, and people kind of liked the idea that you had these lovable losers. Things are different now. And in the era of free agency, where you have the ability to go out and sign players, and clearly this was a tank job by the White Sox, that's one thing. But the luxury tax thing is not working. Baseball doesn't have a salary cap. The big money teams are fighting it. They don't want it. Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox, they don't want a salary cap, and they've successfully fended it off. So they said, okay, let's have a luxury tax. So the teams go over a certain level, they have to pay money, which gets distributed to other teams, presumably so they'll use that money to spend and sign free agents. Well, that's not happening, and this is a complete embarrassment. This is the White Sox team that's been around, forever. They're part of baseball history. And this isn't as shameful as the Black Sox scandal, players accepting bribes to throw games, but this is awful. This is a complete embarrassment. And, yes, the Tigers lost 119 in 2003. That was bad, too. But they're going to blow by the Mets with 120 plus, maybe as many as 126. And I think this is something that has to be addressed. There's got to be some penalties. I mean, tanking, yes, it benefited the Baltimore Orioles. The Cubs won a World Series doing it that way. But what the White Sox have done this year is really despicable, and I think baseball needs to address it. All right, coming up in the next hour, more on the Monday night game. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Yeah, I'm an early morning guy. I get up very early, and these Monday night games, they're tough. They're tough for me to do. I know I don't go on the air until 9 o'clock, but I get in here very early to prep. I like to go to the gym before I come in, so my day starts very early. I was thinking, if this team ever gets good, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Like Kansas City, they never play a 1 o'clock game. They play some 4 o'clock games in the afternoon, but it seems like they're playing night games all the time. They play on Monday night, they play on Sunday night, they play on Thursday night. And because this team has been bad, it's been easier on me, a lot of 1 o'clock games, but they do have one Monday night tonight, and that is their one Monday night game of the year, which has been kind of a nightmare for this team in recent years. Again, I mentioned in the update 8 and 30 in the last 30 Monday night games. There have been some stinkers over that period of time. And, I think when I was a kid, we're going back over 50 years, but what a moment that was. And I did stay up late at that time. I was in high school and saw Walt Garrison dragged down at the 1 yard line by Ken Houston to preserve a 14-7 Monday night win. And This town, after a big Monday night game, man, it was something else. And the next day, that's all people were talking about, the Monday night football game. It goes back, the first really big one that they won was in 1971 when they played the Rams. Now, this was a really cool thing because they had hired George Allen, who had been fired the year before. He'd done a really good job in Los Angeles. The owner just didn't like him. His name was Dan Reeves, not that Dan Reeves, but Dan Reeves and George Allen did not see eye to eye. In fact, he fired him one time, and the players held a mutiny. And they said, if he's not back, we're not playing. And that usually isn't enough to bring back the coach, but that did it. Allen came back, I think it was maybe for another year or two. He was always really good in the regular season, and then in playoff games, not so much. They didn't have as many playoff games, but he got into a few of them with the Rams and lost them all. So anyway, he was fired and came here in 71 and brought a lot of his Rams players with him. In fact, they called them the Ramskins, the over-the-hill gang guys like, Jack Pardee and Richie Pettibone, and there were several others. Dyron Talbert, who was probably the biggest emotional leader of the team. He'd come from the Rams with Allen, and they had a team that was on the doorstep of the playoffs. If they won this game, they would be in the playoffs for the first time since, I think, 1942. So almost 30 years, or 1945, I guess. So it was a long time. And so they went to Los Angeles, and it's Roman Gabriel, who was the coach, the quarterback that Allen had, and it was a great game. There was Speedy Duncan. I remember, I think he had a pick six in that game. Also had a big punt return, and they won the game. And this town was on its ear. I know that was nirvana. And then there were some really bad Monday night games, including the one where Joe Theismann broke his leg in 1985. But there were some big ones mixed in there as well, and some big matchups, like they had games against the Giants that were huge. They would play the Cowboys on Monday night. I mean, the excitement here was really palpable back in the day. And now, because they've undergone such a transformation, and because – well, and in fact, this is a big part of it, too, because Monday Night Football isn't as special because they play other night games. Every single week, there are two other night games. And Sunday Night Football has really replaced Monday Night Football as the big one. Monday Night Football is still big, but Sunday night is the most watched of all the games. In fact, it's the most watched primetime show, period. And that has a bigger appeal, I guess, or a bigger feel to it. But Monday Night Football is still really big, and the Commanders go into this with a new look, obviously, and they have a defense which right now has been, well, it was good enough against a really bad Giants team the week before, but did not look good at all in the opening week against Tampa Bay, and especially on third down, where the Tampa Bay was, I think, 9 of 13 on third down. So in the extra time they had to get ready for this, the extra day of preparation, defensive coordinator Joe Whitt took a look at that third down situation.
My number one focus was, since we had an extra day, was the third downs. To go back and look at every third down, examine the call. All right, were there any repeat mistakes, and the common theme of what was keeping us from getting off the field. Because once we get off the field, we're causing negative plays on some first and second downs, but we get to third downs, and one reason or another, we've had 5 penalties on defense. All 5 penalties came on third down. So that's something that can't happen. And so we've looked at a number of different areas, but that was my main focus when we had the extra time.
Well, and they also have two highly paid defensive linemen in Payne and Allen, and they were virtually invisible in the first 2 games. Asked about that, Whitt is saying he's not concerned.
As a defense, we're not where we need to be. I know everybody wants to get enamored in individual player stats and numbers and all that, but we rush as a collective, we play as a collective, and once we start playing better as a collective, individuals, numbers, and all that will increase. But until we, as a collective, play better, it is going to be what it is with certain people's numbers.
Now, here's the big, I think, overall, if you took the 2 games so far and you said, what's the biggest problem defensively? It's probably the secondary. Secondary not only isn't good, it's unsettled. And they have now the first-round draft pick who may or may not play tonight. It's one of those things where, nobody's saying, oh, God, you got to have Emmanuel Forbes back. No, he's been a big disappointment since he was a first-round draft pick last year. In fact, I don't think he'd even be on the team if he wasn't taken in the first round because of the guaranteed money that goes with the bonus and all that. But he's now questionable with a thumb injury, didn't play last week because of it. They put in Michael Davis, and according to Pro Football Focus, he missed 3 tackles and allowed 60 passing yards. They eventually benched him, and here they are, 3 games into a season that had a full offseason, a full training camp, and 2 games to prepare, and Joe Whitt is still talking about basically open tryouts in the secondary.
We have to do a better job as a defense of tackling and getting multiple people to the ball, and that's part of the speed element. We're still on the outside looking for the combination that's going to give us the best chance. And like I told you, I believe 2 weeks ago, it will be a week-to-week deal, not just necessarily at the cornerback position, but throughout the defense of who we think is going to give us the best opportunity to win the game that we're about to face. So the rotation might be a little bit different, but it's just because that we want to look at who's going to give us the best chance to win this game. And then next week when we go against Arizona, we'll figure out who's going to give us the best chance to win that game.
I have never coached in the NFL. That's not a winning formula. Who's going to give us the best chance to win? This isn't like baseball where you're matching up left-handers and right-handers. You got to have continuity on the defense. Who are your guys? Pick your top 11. Who are your backups? He's saying depending on the matchups, we're going to plug in guys in different spots. That's not good. And then last week, this is another indictment, if they needed more on the Ron Rivera drafts. Jayden Davis, who was a first-round pick in 2021, so 3 years ago, and has struggled in the various places they put him. First, they tried him at middle linebacker. That didn't work. They moved him to outside linebacker. New coaching staff comes in, and they're looking at a reclamation project. He's in the last year of his rookie deal, so you do something with him or you cut him. So they say, well, let's try him as a defensive end. I thought he played okay in the opening game against Tampa, even though they gave up 4 touchdowns to Baker Mayfield. But he was a healthy scratch last week. And the reason that Dan Quinn gave for making him a healthy scratch was, well, they put up Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton's a second-round pick who came in with a foot injury, had more foot surgery. They're bringing him along slowly. And they had him on a pitch count. So they could only use a defensive lineman for X number of snaps. So you had to have another defensive lineman up. And your first-round draft pick from only 3 years ago isn't even active for the game. That's a bad look. That's a really bad look. So this defense really at this point is very much a work in progress. And what is bothersome about it, particularly the secondary, is that Joe Whitt came from Dallas where he was a secondary coach, and Dan Quinn is a defensive coordinator. This is his side of the ball. And not that the offense has lit it up either, and Cliff Kingsbury's taking the blame for that. Having to settle for 7 field goals last week, but at least they're moving the ball. They ran up a lot of yardage last week, which was a good thing. And they got inside the red zone a bunch of times. They just self-destructed with all those penalties. So those are things, and you take everything with, okay, they're a work in progress. Nobody's expecting miracles this year. Let's see what happens. But that's how they stand right now. And really, because there's so much focus on Jayden Daniels and the fact that so far he has been the best of the 3 rookie quarterbacks, though yesterday Bo Nix played really well. Big win for Denver yesterday. That was a stunner as they were able to win that game big. But the development of Jayden Daniels is the number one topic here, and this is what they have to look to. All right, great interview that Scott Van Pelt conducted with Jayden Daniels last week. It's going to air tonight as part of Monday Night Countdown. I pulled some of the highlights of it, and we will get to that as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Monday Night Football. It's an infrequent occurrence when you have a team that's posting 4 and 5 win seasons, and so they're coming off a 4-win season. And even though there's great excitement about Jayden Daniels coming here, new coaching staff, most importantly, new ownership with finally the time to get things set up for the season, you got an actual general manager, you got real structure here. Not everybody's fully excited about them, and they got enough good teams that they've been able to fill out the schedule. But they are on Monday Night Football tonight at Cincinnati, 7.5-point underdogs. It does not look very promising for a team that only kicked field goals last week against a Cincinnati team that expects to contend for the Super Bowl, and they've got the guy in Joe Burrow, and that makes for an interesting contrast here. You got the last two Heisman Trophy winners from LSU. In fact, I think they've only had 3 over the whole. They've been a great football power over the years. I think it's Billy Cannon, who won in 1960, Joe Burrow, who won however many years ago it was, and then last year, Jayden Daniels. So you got the young Jayden Daniels going up against the more experienced Joe Burrow, who's been to a Super Bowl. And Daniels, when he came to LSU, knew about the legacy of Joe Burrow, was also a transfer like he was, although Burrow was buried on the bench at Ohio State. He lost the starting job to Dwayne Haskins, and he transferred at a time when you had to sit out a year. So he sat out a full season at LSU, and kind of like Daniels, the first year that he played there, he was okay. The second year is when he emerged and had arguably the greatest college season ever. That team was spectacular. I mean, he had great players on it, but that team was just dominant and won the national championship. And you remember him smoking a cigar in the locker room, and then he comes into the NFL. He actually got hurt at FedEx Field like halfway through his rookie year, tore his ACL, but came back, had a big year the next year, went to the Super Bowl, has battled injuries back and forth, but is considered to be one of those guys. He's got one of the big money contracts, $50 million plus per year. So Daniels wants to get there. He wants to get his team to the Super Bowl like Burrow, but he's just really starting out. Now, last week, Scott Van Pelt, who is from this area, lets it be known. He's known as a Maryland guy, but at ESPN, I mean, Greenberg just wears you out with this Jets stuff. I mean, I know you're a Jets fan. I get it. Scott is a fan of Washington football. He grew up a Redskin fan, and he hasn't lost that. And he had the opportunity, thanks to the studio where they do PTI, that he was able to move his very popular show in Connecticut down here to Washington, raise his family here, which he wanted to do. And that affords opportunities like last week where they didn't have to fly him in from Bristol to do a sit-down interview with Jayden Daniels. Just had to drive over to Ashburn to do this. And I'm going to give you 3 parts of it. First part is they're talking about the early part of his rookie season and finally getting that first win last week against the Giants.
Jayden, you got a victory last week in a home opener over a division rival. And around here, I'm sure you figured it out, but if you haven't, you're gonna. Beating the Giants, beating the Eagles, beating the Cowboys especially, that's a big deal. How much does it help, if there are nerves, to just exhale a little bit and get that first win at home?
Man, it means a lot. A couple of my buddies, CJ Stroud, people like that have been in this league a year ago, they told me to celebrate these wins because it's hard to win in the NFL. So first one at home, it wasn't the way that we wanted to win, but a win is a win. Against one of my personal best friends, Malik Neighbors, and the Giants, it means a lot, not only to me, but, to the fan base and everybody else.
You've run for 132 already, and I think Washington fans understand your legs are a weapon. But I think maybe you understand that Washington fans, when you take off, everybody's like holding their breath, right? How do you balance the fact that your legs are definitely going to be part of what make you great in this league with the fact that in this league, there's some big fellas out there and you're not the heaviest guy. So how do you balance that?
You got to pick your spots. When it's time to extend the play outside the pocket with your arm, with your legs, get what you can get so you can stay ahead of the chains. But also, no matter what, any quarterback in this league, anybody, you take that wrong hit, is always bad from there. But it's just picking your spots. And for me, like the coach, staff, everybody, they don't want to take away what got me here, what could help me. But, they just want me to go out there and just pick the spots when it's most important too.
I was texting with Coach Herm this morning and told him I was going to visit with you. He told me to tell you hello. He also told me to tell you to slide. I'm sure you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a balance. I mean, part of what makes you dangerous is that. I mean, you don't want to take that part of your game away. But it is, I mean, there's some big cats out there running around. You mentioned CJ. I find it really interesting that there's these three California quarterbacks, Bryce Young, yourself, CJ. I know you know each other well. I know you guys train together. I know there's a lot there. It's crazy that a year ago those guys go 1-2, then you go 2, and they've had very different paths, obviously, earlier in their careers. What have they shared with you about what this process is like that you found helpful?
Just be yourself. The main thing is we got here for a reason. You know, teams picked us for a reason. Don't try to go out there and be somebody that you're not. Continue to be yourself and enjoy the wins, because they're hard to come by. Obviously, it's two different type of paths from them last year, and then trying to follow them up this year, man. Is go out there and just enjoy the wins, be yourself, and try to lead the team the best you can.
That's part one of the Jayden Daniels conversation with Scott Van Pelt. Part two, they talk about leadership, and all signs are pointing to him being a very good leader. Everything you've heard from training camp is how much they respect him, his work ethic, coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning, how he handles things in the huddle, how he respects veterans. I mean, it's all positive stuff. And this is Daniels talking to SVP about how he views the leadership role.
The way you earn respect in this league is how you play, and how you carry yourself on and off the field. So for me, you go out there and you don't have any confidence, like the vets would be able to see that, especially somebody that they play in the most important position on the field. If you don't got no confidence, man, they're going to see right through that. If you try to go out there and be fake or not yourself, not authentic, man, they'll see straight through that. So for me, it's like, how can I show up every day, continue to be myself, have the humility to know that I'm a rookie. You know, I'm not too good to take advice from anybody or learn from anybody. But at the end of the day, man, once I step on the field, I'm still confident in my abilities.
But see, that's the balance. That's what people said. Like, confident, but doesn't have all the answers. Like, have there been moments early on where it's like a hurdle for you, something that happens? Maybe it's a simple rep that works well. I don't know. I wouldn't have the slightest idea. That's why I'm asking. But have there been moments early that help that confidence grow and become even more solid?
Yeah, I think it's just the more of the reps that I got in practice over time, from OTAs to training camp, and be able to get more comfortable, go out there and have fun, be able to talk trash to the defense and stuff like that.
Right.
Somebody I really grew a closer relationship with was Bobby Wagner. Obviously, we know what he done in this league.
It's a good dude. That's a good dude to lean on. I mean, that's gold jacket guy right there.
For sure. So him, it's like just asking questions, but at the end of the day, man, we still competing, and, you know, I'm a competitor.
Yeah, that's on leadership from Jayden Daniels. Last part is on something that this franchise has been chasing now for over 30 years. Realize since Mark Rippon left at the end of the 93 season, so he was a starter for 5 years, or most of 5 years. You had a few starts in there with Doug Williams, but he pretty much took over the starting role in 89, so he added 89, 90, 91, 92, or the 91 season was when they won the Super Bowl. He comes back in 92, plays the whole year, didn't have a really good year, got hurt some in 93, and his last game in Washington was actually a New Year's Eve game against the Minnesota Vikings, and they chose not to bring him back the next year. That was when Norv Turner came in 94, the whole Heath Shuler thing, and it's been one thing after another. And aside from Kirk Cousins starting 3 straight years, there's been unbelievable instability at a position which I've said many times had this unbelievable stability for over 20 years, from Sonny Jurgensen in 1964 to Billy Kilmer to Joe Theismann. Those were maybe with 1 or 2 starts in between, like a Randy Johnson got one and maybe 1 or 2 others, that was your quarterback for over 20 years. It was, you know, not quite what the stability that the Packers have now, but for that period of time, you had the Hall of Fame quarterback in Sonny, the leader who took you to a Super Bowl in Billy Kilmer, and Joe Theismann, who took you to 2 and 1-1. And you had all that. And then Theismann broke his leg, and yeah, we had, you know, ups and downs and Rippon and others, but but they are looking for that franchise guy. And so when Scott talked to him about that, about becoming that guy, he leaned on his own history as a fan and talking about the great quarterbacks who have come before Jayden Daniels.
Joe Theismann, Doug Williams, Mark Rippon. I could keep going. They're way before you were born. But what's your understanding of what Washington was like when that team had it cooking?
Man, I got a front row seat to see every day with Doug here and see when Joe comes back. But I remember one time me and Doug went out and got lunch. And obviously, Doug is a star. They love him for what he did, what he accomplished here. So be able to just see that, it's just gratitude and humility to me to know that, man, I got somebody that done what I want to do at a high level, and all I got to do is go out there, learn from him, and, just try to keep getting better.
There's a lot that's new. It's not just you. It's your coach. It's your GM. It's your OC. There's a lot of guys that are new, and all old guys. Like, we're all from somewhere. I'm from here, and I'm representing all my boys on the text chain. Like, you got to tell them, like, that everyone is just so hungry to get back to something like what it once was. How do you describe the appetite you all have as a group to take the steps towards getting back to what once was here in Washington?
Man, we're super hungry for it. It's going to be a process. It's not going to be an overnight thing, overnight success. But, if we could come in and get better each and every day, obviously we believe in Adam and DQ here. Those two great leaders that gave me the opportunity to come here and showcase my talent. So I'm forever grateful for them. But as a team, man, it's just how can we get better each and every day? How can we learn from our mistakes so when November and December come, we can hit our strides?
It's wild how you guys just rookies, quarterbacks, you get drafted high for a reason. They throw you in the deep end. It's like, let's go. Yeah. Like, there's just no time to wait. Does that accelerate the timeline? For you all as the quarterback and the organization, it is a process, right? And there's patience, but how you balance the idea of being patient with the need to get there as quickly as you can. What's that look like?
It's crazy. For me, I can say I played a lot of football at college. I was blessed enough to have those reps. So everybody's path is different, but it's still a different type of game when you get up here. Mm-hmm. No matter how much you play, how many reps you played in college, once you get out here, it's still a different speed. You got grown men that are playing chess, and you might be thinking you're playing chess, but you might be playing checkers. So you gotta get up to speed real quick. But God blessed me enough to be in this position, and He wouldn't put me in this position. He think I can handle it.
The lights of Monday night, there's nothing quite like that. As a kid, I can vividly remember riding home, when Washington would play on a Monday night game. There was nothing more exciting than that. And it was later then, but that music, the feeling of what Monday Night Football was, and I wasn't on the field, obviously, I was just watching. You're going to be out there on a Monday night. Does it still represent something that feels big?
Yeah, I think just every game is big to me. Sure. My first year and everything, so first Monday night game is going to be special. I was able to blessed enough to experience my first game, the first home opener, and now first Monday night game on the same month, man. So it's a blessing.
Well, I talked to Cliff. Touchdowns would be cool too,
For
right?
sure. 100%.
Field goals add up, but touchdowns are nice as well.
I'm right with you.
You got some of those in the back pocket?
Man, we're trying to. I'm right with you.
Right on. Has it been fun?
It has. It's been super fun.
Is there some, just as a last thought, it seems to me that you see that. I was watching you against Tampa, and I see the smile on your face. It appears that you're a young man in a professional atmosphere who still has the joy of just playing the game. That's apparent to me. Is that something that you're feeling as you're out there doing this thing? Man,
honestly, that's just how I am. Football is a fun sport. It's a kid's game, but as you get older, obviously more is on the line, more is at stake. But for me, you try to find that inner kid, and you're still playing football at the end of the day. You're not really worried about what's going on. You just want to win the game. You want to go out there and make plays and have fun.
That's Jayden Daniels with Scott Van Pelt. They're going to run, I guess, some of that, maybe all of it tonight on the Monday Night Countdown show on ESPN. And one of the other things, I didn't put this on, but at the end of the conversation, Scott was trying to educate him on how it works between Maryland and Virginia. I'm like Scott. I'm a Maryland guy, so we rarely went to Virginia. And Virginia people rarely go to Maryland. Everybody goes to D.C. But, looking at going across the river to Virginia, what are you talking about there? And vice versa. So Jayden really didn't have a good understanding of that, and you get that. The other thing was, Scott was trying to tell him about 495 traffic, stay off the Beltway. Well, that's something that he doesn't really deal with because I think like all players on the team, I don't think there's anybody on the team that doesn't live in Virginia. And it makes sense because you're having meetings early in the morning out at Ashburn. You don't want to be stuck in Beltway traffic coming from Maryland to try to get there. So it absolutely makes sense to live in Virginia if that's where you train. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the last player from the Redskins, the organization, to live in Maryland was Neil Olkowitz. And Neil Olkowitz was actually married to somebody I went to junior high school with. And they met at Maryland. He played there. And they lived in Maryland, I think mainly for her family, whatever. I think he's the last one. And George Stark, who last played for this team in 1985, was the last who lived in D.C., the District of Columbia. And when you're hearing this discussion about the stadium, and I think, most people would want it to be at the RFK site, they've also talked about putting the training facility there. That's not going to work. That's just not going to happen because you can't get players to there, and I don't think they're going to live in D.C. These are people a lot of them raising young families. They want bigger houses, bigger yards, and the more suburban feel. So I would think the training facility stays in Virginia, but I give credit to Scott for trying. You really have to be from here to have an understanding of that, and that's something that I guess if he's here for a long time, he'll come to realize that. But there aren't many who've been here a while. Terry McLaurin, he's from Indiana. He's been here for a while. Jonathan Allen, I'm sure, has an understanding. He's a Virginia guy. He went to Stonebridge before he went to Alabama. So he gets that. But a lot of these guys, they're in and out. It's just a different feel than it was when the players were here for a long time and became part of the community. Some of them had 10-year-plus runs here. That hasn't happened because of the team being bad. It's not that way with the Kansas City players. They've been there for years and years and years. So hopefully that'll come with winning. Jayden Daniels getting started on what could be a long, long run here. We'll see. And Scott's right. He's got to learn how to slide, and that's going to be big in his development. And Chapter 3 of his rookie year starts tonight in Cincinnati. All right, coming up, Bram Weinstein will have a preview of tonight's game, as he calls the game tonight, and other thoughts. Plus, we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. See you then.